Today is Monday, July 27th, 2026, and I am here with Benjamin. And we are going to talk about his time spent in lockdown during COVID in 2020.
Chapter 7, Switching Masks. The question came back on the plane, and I was somewhere over the Midwest going home for what was supposed to be a few weeks of pandemic lockdown. The continuous hum of the engines underneath me, that low, steady drone from the start of a flight to the end. And underneath the hum, in my stomach, the pit. The same pit was with me on that flight. The one that opened in the living room in 2018 and never closed. Every identity I'd put on since had been something to fill it. Student coach, health and wellness, Ben, Benji, the party boy. Each one a lid on the same hole. None of them had filled it. It was waiting now. Who am I now? There wasn't much to do during lockdown. No school, no friends to connect with, no bars to walk to, no gym to drive to, no reason to leave the house. The world had shrunk down to my parents' house, and inside that house, the only place that was mine was the garage. The garage had its own little gym, free weights, a bench, a rack, enough to do everything I needed if I was willing to be creative with it. So every day that's where I went. 1 to 2 hours, sometimes more. The garage was the gym, and the gym was the day. That was the morning. Workout. Then class on Zoom during the day. Then back to my room at night. Repeat. And it felt good. Not in some clinical, observable way, actually good. Standing in that garage after a set, looking down at my arms and watching new veins surface across them, seeing muscle that hadn't been there the week before, that was satisfaction. The body finally responding the way I'd been demanding it to respond, the work showing up on the surface where I could see it, not just the numbers on the bar going up, the body growing with them. I was still only a human doing at this point, and the only thing the human doing knew was constant progress, constant movement in the direction I thought was forward. I never slowed down enough to ask what direction I was actually headed in. As long as the numbers went up and as long as I was leaning out, the direction was right. And with selective androgen receptor modulators, SARMs, already in my system, the numbers went up fast. My bench press jumped from 225 to 275 pounds in a single month. The feedback loop tightened, more weight on the bar, more visible muscle in the mirror, more proof that the system was working. But somewhere in all that extra time, all the hours that used to belong to life before COVID, I started researching again. The fasting was gone. I'd left it in Evanston, but the engine underneath fasting didn't shut off. The need to control the body, to optimize it, to make it match what the rules said it should be, was searching for a new vehicle. I started reading about diets that didn't involve time-restricted feeding, diets that would let me eat throughout the day but still strip body fat. After a few weeks of research, I landed on one, the ketogenic diet. A lateral move, but I didn't see it that way at the time. I genuinely believed it was the more sustainable choice for the body. Sustainable for what I was trying to do with it. My goal was still to stay lean, still to cut weight, still to be thin. The ketogenic diet was supposed to let me do all three, without the empty stomach of a 24-hour fast. In Texas in early May, the gyms started opening again. The garage had been enough during lockdown because there was nothing else. But the second commercial gyms opened back up, I was back in one. Every morning, anywhere from 6 to 8, doors open and me walking through them, pushing the numbers higher every time I stepped inside. I wasn't going to the gym to work out. I was going to try to fill the emotional pit. That's the only way I can describe it now. Every morning the gym was an answer to the same question. What do I do with this emptiness in my stomach? What do I do with this unbearable weight on my chest and shoulders? The hole only grew deeper. The answer was always the same. More volume, more time, more weight, more days a week. And somewhere in those early weeks of May between sets, I started looking around. The same regulars every morning, the same machines, the same routines, the same expressions on the same faces. I'd watch them and wonder, was this person here for health, or were they here for the same reason I was? To fill something, the hole in their stomach, the weight on their shoulders, the gap in their life. Were they working out because it was good for them, or because it was the only thing that made the next 24 hours survivable? I didn't know. I couldn't see inside them, but I could see inside myself, and underneath the bench press, underneath the SARMs, underneath the keto, the answer was already obvious. I wasn't here for health. I was here because the alternative was sitting alone in my parents' house with a hole I couldn't fill any other way. Sometime in May, I added one more layer to the system. Cheat days, 6 days of strict keto, Monday through Saturday, no carbs, clean proteins and fats. Then on Sunday, I allowed the wheels of my diet wagon to come off. Whatever I wanted, whenever I wanted, how much I wanted, no limit on time of day or quantity, the reward at the end of a strict week. That's how it was sold in the keto and bodybuilding community. That's how I sold it to myself. But Sunday wasn't a cheat day. It was a controlled binge. Waking up on a Sunday in May, I'd feel both at once relief and dread. Sitting in the same body in the same place, relief because the day was already permission. I could eat whatever I wanted for the next 12 hours and the rules would not be in the room. Dread because at the end of that day, 6 more days of strict keto were waiting on the other side. Sunday wasn't a break. Sunday was the only 12 hours before the rules became rigid again, and then I'd start eating. No matter how full my physical stomach got, the emptiness in my emotional stomach stayed exactly where it had been, untouched, unmoved. The food filled the physical stomach, the food never reached the emotional stomach. So I'd keep eating more, whatever was in the kitchen, whatever I could order, whatever was in the pantry from before the week started, trying to push the emotional stomach full through the physical one, trying to overwhelm it with volume, and by the end of the day I'd put myself into a food coma, couldn't move, couldn't think, body lying somewhere, couch, bed, floor, heavy with everything I'd put into it. And still the pit was right where it had been when I woke up that morning. Sunday wasn't a break from the disorder. Sunday was the disorder, given permission. The rest of the summer ran the same pattern. 6 days strict keto, Monday through Saturday. On Sunday, a controlled binge a week. SARM still in my system the whole time, still pushing the numbers up. Nothing new happened. The cycle didn't escalate. It didn't slow down. It just kept turning. That was the texture of the summer. 3 months of the same week. 3 months of Sunday morning relief with the freedom of a controlled binge, followed by Sunday night food comas. 3 months of waking up Monday and locking the rules back in. 3 months of the body getting leaner and stronger on the outside, the pit unchanged on the inside. The decision came on a walk. I was on a walk through my neighborhood when it arrived, sunshine streaming through the trees, landing on my skin, and in the warmth of it on my arms, the decision settled, and I was going to stop cutting, stop keto, stop the controlled binges. I was going to bulk. The sunshine made the decision feel like the right one. I turned around and walked back to my house to make breakfast. Oats, protein powder, frozen berries, carbs and protein in the same bowl for the first time in 4 months. The first meal of the new system. From that day forward, I ate 5 or 6 meals a day, 3,500 to 4,000 calories, the first time since the beginning of 2019. I'd been in a calorie surplus. The first time since the beginning of 2019, my body wasn't being given less than what it needed on a day-to-day basis. The first 6 or 7 weeks of the bulk, the body responded. September into mid to late October, the scale went from 190 to 215 pounds, 25 pounds in 7 weeks. I could feel the gains in my strength, the extra calories in my body, the calories finally exceeding the demand. The same engine that had run the cut was now running the bulk. The engine didn't know the difference, only now the metric had flipped. The scale was supposed to go up instead of down. The plate was supposed to be full instead of empty, but the engine didn't know the difference, and neither did the pit. The pit in the body felt exactly the same, maybe worse. The bigger I got, the deeper it grew. I'd thought the higher my weightlifting numbers went, the more internally filled I'd feel. The opposite was true. My bench press went from 275 to 315. My row went from 2 plates to 3 plates to 4 plates on each side. The numbers were flying up, and one afternoon on the plate-loaded row machine, I finished a set at 4 45-pound plates, the most weight I'd ever moved on that machine, and released my grip on the handle. I heard the weight drop, the plates rattle against each other on the way down, the thud as they hit the safety bar. And in the moment of that sound, the loaded weight coming to rest, my hands empty, the body still pumped from the set, I felt nothing. Worse than nothing. The emptiness of the pit had grown deeper than it had been before reaching my weightlifting goals. The strongest version of my body that had ever existed sitting on the row machine, listening to plates rattle into silence, and underneath the strength, underneath the bulk, underneath the 4 months of feeding the body, the pit was still there, bigger now, audible in the quiet after the weight dropped. The row machine moment didn't change anything. The next morning, the routine ran exactly the way it had run the morning before. The engine kept running because the engine didn't know it could turn off or stop. A week or so later, I flew back to Evanston to visit for a weekend. The trip had already been planned, nothing significant, just a long weekend to visit friends. I didn't know it was going to be the trip where something cracked. Saturday started not like any typical Saturday because during COVID, there was no such thing as a typical Saturday. But walking out of my friend's apartment that morning and seeing the sunrise come up over Lake Michigan, you could feel it. The energy of a fall Saturday, the energy of a football Saturday, it was in the air all day. After 7 months of a lockdown world, after 7 months of garage workouts and Houston quietness, the buzz of a campus game day felt like electricity. You could feel it in the cold air off the lake. You could feel it in the apartments where my friends were getting ready. The atmosphere was there. The day moved the way game days move. A slow build through the afternoon, music, drinks early. The same friends and fraternity brothers I'd left in March now gathered in new buildings, houses and off-campus apartments instead of dorms. By the time kickoff was approaching at 6, we were heading to the bar. We got to the bar a little before kickoff, a well-known spot in downtown Evanston, the kind of place that had been busy on every game day before the world locked down. I was surprised they were open at the capacity they were. We were allowed to sit at the bar next to each other, closer than I'd expected given everything else. My fraternity brother was sitting next to a girl we went to school with. He turned to her and made the introduction. "This is Ben. He's my pledge son." Then he kept going. He told her about the stroke I'd had in high school. She turned and started asking me questions. So I told her my story the way I always told it. The story I'd told dozens of times since I was 16, the way I told it to strangers, at parties, to teammates, to anyone who heard about the stroke and wanted to know more, from the outside, in the third person, as if I was describing something that had happened to someone I knew, but not me. I'd told it so many times by then that the words came out without me thinking about them. But that night, somewhere in the middle of me sharing my story, something different happened, and a full body wave of goosebumps moved across my skin, from my arms, up my neck, down my back, all at once, not from the cold, not from the alcohol. not from the volume of the room. I kept telling her the story while it was happening, the words coming out the same way they always had, but the wave of goosebumps was still rippling through me. When I finished, I had to sit back on the bar stool. That is me. That is my story. I'm the one who lived that. The story I'd told a countless number of times in the third person about some other kid. For the first time in 3 years, it belonged to me. Only a few seconds, we were all enjoying the night enough that nobody noticed I'd drifted out of the conversation. But inside those few seconds, something had finally arrived where it had been repressed for 3 years. I flew back to Houston a couple of days later, and the engine was still running on schedule, 5 or 6 meals a day. The gym every morning, the bulk still running. The system that had been running underneath that moment in the bar didn't pause to register what had happened. So I picked up where I'd left off. Through the rest of October, through November, through December, the bulk ran for 4 months total. By the end of it, the scale read past 220 pounds. The body was bigger than it had ever been. The numbers in the gym were higher than they had ever been. The cycle ran because the cycle was the only thing I knew how to do, motion. The moment my story had arrived didn't get smaller, it didn't disappear, but it got buried under the rhythm of the engine that was running. The meals, the lifts, the SARMs, the schedule. The wave of goosebumps was still there underneath all of it, just quieter than the noise above it. As January grew closer, the pit became heavier, the question started returning. Who are we now? I had put on the mask of a bodybuilder over 2020, and yet the emptiness had only grown.